In this story, we follow Bryant, an undercover ex-cop with a violent past who tries to keep a low profile after a failed mission in the United States. Bryant lives in a modest mobile home in a quiet border town in Mexico, working as a land surveyor and training in martial arts during his spare time. During his recent training sessions, a teenager named Oscar has been quietly observing him from a distance, carefully trying to replicate his moves after finishing his own daily routine. Oscar heads to his school, arriving right at the last minute before it closes. After finishing his classes, the student runs into the gang led by Flaco from Mara L17, who intercept him with bad intentions. In a moment full of adrenaline, Oscar quickly turned around and began sprinting through the neighborhood, hiding behind a vehicle. Nearby, the ex-cop was in the area and immediately caught on to the situation. While he was in the middle of preparing dinner, the gang broke into his house and Flaco aimed his gun at him. He really wanted to shoot him in the head right then, but he just couldn't bring himself to do it. Since his brother is one of the gang leaders, he doesn't want them to lose respect again by escaping, otherwise, they'll have to punish him. They took the money from the house and walked away, insulting him in every possible way they could. The next morning, Oscar stayed waiting for the ex-cop to continue his training from a distance. However, knowing his life was in danger, Bryant decided to approach him and invite him to his training sessions, guiding him like a mentor for several days. Oscar remained the target of constant jokes and relentless humiliation from the gang, who viewed him as weak and insignificant. Not suspecting that in silence and with an ever-growing determination, he trained rigorously every day alongside a professional, refining his skills and building his strength to one day stand up to his tormentors. To help him pay off his debts, Bryant even went ahead and secured him a job as a helper at his construction site. While he was at home, the young man pointed out that he would really like to put into practice the skills he had picked up over the past few months. His mentor responded that what he's learning isn't for competition, it's for self-defense in case it's ever needed. To fight professionally, he needs a completely different mindset, the proper training for it, a whole new attitude. It's an entirely different world and approach altogether. The next day, his training session was interrupted by the arrival of Oscar's brother, who told him that he had just come to the town to restore order, after seeing the moves of his trainer. Hector realized he was a police officer, from the way he positioned himself and his gaze. It was very obvious. He could spot a cop from miles away.
Oscar tells him that he is making a mistake. He is a humble man. He has been training him in the last few months. He helped him get a job as a topographer. To avoid problems for his mentor, Oscar decides to continue his training in a gym where he meets the owner's daughter, who tells him that in order to register as a minor, he needs the signature of one of his parents. To celebrate Hector's arrival, the gang holds a party in which they invite Oscar, who after a few minutes of being present, tells his brother that he must return home. He has to get up early to go to work. With the aim of turning his brother against him, the skinny guy points out that he thinks he's superior to the gang, has always seen them as inferior, and probably works for the police. His brother gets angry and asks him not to hang out with that guy. He should forget about work. He will come with them to make bets. Oscar replies that he would like to rest, until he realizes that they will take him to a place where clandestine fights are held. Without hesitation, Oscar changes his mind and heads to the establishment, where we meet a subject nicknamed the Collector, a fearful fighter who has had an undisputed streak since his appearance in combat. The referee points out that the rules are simple. The one who endures a round without being knocked out will receive 5,000. The one who wins will take 10,000 pesos after a second confrontation. The Collector leaves his opponent unconscious in a matter of seconds. Despite this, Oscar offers himself as the third contender of the evening, something that ends up surprising the public. Thinking that it is a joke, the presenter demands that he get off the quadrilateral. However, the young man takes out a bundle of bills to ensure his participation before this. The presenter tells him to position himself in the other corner, and without thinking about it, he responds to the attack of his opponent with 2 forceful blows. Enraged by having drawn blood from him, the Collector strikes with all his strength, without being able to hit a single blow. After blocking one of his attacks with his elbow, the Collector ends up fracturing his left hand, making 3 simple movements. The young man manages to get the victory without receiving a scratch. Without being able to process what they have just seen, the gang is paralyzed without saying a word when Oscar approaches. He takes away the money that Skinny had bet on him and leaves with his brother. On the other hand, we meet Piero, a corrupt lawyer who works for Sonny, a former Los Angeles police captain who is now imprisoned, currently a dangerous mafia boss who runs the organization from behind prison bars. His lawyer, after receiving the recording of Oscar's fight, quickly decides to visit his boss to show him the footage. Seeing the teenager's moves, the mobster says it is the same fighting style as Bryant's. It turns out that while Sonny secretly ran a corrupt criminal network as a police captain, Bryant infiltrated his organization with the goal of exposing him. His work ended in an operation that revealed his corruption and sent him to prison. Since then, the mobster holds a deep hatred toward Bryant, whom he blames for destroying his empire. Because of this, he asks his lawyer to hire the Guzman brothers, two twins who work as hitmen. With the idea of turning his brother into a professional fighter, Hector decides to take him back to Bryant, asks him to keep training him, and offers a monthly payment. Bryant refuses the offer and tells them to leave his property. He will not train anyone to use his skills in illegal fights. If he decided to help him, it was so he could defend himself from his attackers, no matter how in need he was. He would never accept blood-stained money. He advises him to stay away from gangs, and Hector, feeling offended by the comments, ends up threatening him without knowing his story. His brother asks him to calm down. He would like to speak in private with Bryant. The young man apologizes on behalf of his brother. He admits that his idea was never to compete, but now he would like to do it. Bryant makes it clear that he will not keep training him if his wish is to compete professionally. He does not want him to use the skills he taught. At that moment, the gang member starts touching Bryant's things. The ex-cop gets furious and Hector puts his hand on the gun, saying that even if he knows how to fight, he cannot defend himself from a bullet. He orders him to step back and Bryant surprises him by pulling a gun from his pants. He tells him to use the left thumb and index finger to take the gun out. He must place it on the floor very carefully. If any of the gang moves, their leader will get shot. He tells him to get in the vehicle and orders them to leave. If they show up again on his property, he will shoot and end up killing them. The young man apologizes again and says he never meant to put him in danger. Bryant tells him to leave with them. He does not want to see him again. Before leaving, the gang members assure that they will return for revenge. When enrolling him in the gym to be trained by Marisol's father, she tells him she saw the recording of his fight. It went viral on all social networks. He defeated a professional, leaving him completely humiliated. At that moment, the hitmen appear pretending to be fight promoters looking for fighters. Marisol's father approaches and asks them for their company name. He knows all promoters in the country. Yvonne replies they are an independent company from the United States. Knowing something is off with them, Hector tells them to leave right now. When they walk away, the owner says he does not want trouble with anyone. Hector apologizes and promises it will not happen again. Worried about what might happen, Oscar says they must inform Bryant about the arrival of those criminals. Hector tells him to forget that man, to which his brother replies that he owes him his life. He paid the bills and fed his brothers thanks to him. In the end, Hector accepts, but asks Marisol to go with them to prevent him from attacking when he sees them arrive. Once back at his property, Marisol gets out first and tells him Oscar has something important to say. Bryant asks him to come closer, and the young man tells him about the possible threat. Two suited men entered the gym asking for him. They were bald-headed twins. Realizing the imminent danger, the ex-cop, with a firm voice and alert eyes, orders them to take shelter at once in the van, convinced they have been watched for a long time. Just then, the hitmen open fire against Hector's men. In the middle of the shooting, both manage to take cover in time, while the twins, with no expression at all, unload their weapons directly at the motorhome. However, none of the bullets manage to pierce its structure, since the vehicle is fully armored, reinforced in every angle to withstand high-caliber attacks. Hector asks why he is being chased by two hitmen, to which he replies that he was a police officer in Los Angeles and with the DEA. He dismantled a criminal organization, and they have been looking for him for several years. He has no idea how they found him. Marisol says it could be because of the viral fight post. Oscar stays silent, and his brother says he will call his people to kill the hitmen. Brian says it will be useless. The Guzman twins are professionals. He has a plan to counter the attack. He needs him to go through the window at 7:45. He should not worry. The window is also armored. Leaving the van through a hidden exit, our protagonist manages to position himself behind the hitmen. When Hector goes through the window, one of the twins rises from cover, allowing Brian to shoot him with his crossbow, killing him instantly by piercing his neck with the arrow in a bloody way. Then he surprises the other man, who reacts by attacking him with a gasoline can. He knocks him to the ground, and the ex-cop locks him in a hold. The hitman breaks free and reverses the position, but not for long, with a clear advantage. Our protagonist ends the fight with a strong kick. He asks him to reveal the identity of his boss, but the Colombian answers with insults, so Brian grabs the gasoline can, pours it over his body, and asks him the same question again. Unexpectedly, the hitman ends up setting himself on fire on his own out of fear of reprisals. After securing the area, Brian takes them through the hidden tunnel under the van, telling them that after installing the DA radar, they found the tunnels, and for that reason, he decided to build his house in this area. The man who hired the hitman is named Sonny, a former police captain. He was involved with traffickers and ran a human trafficking network, controlling judges and the DEA from the shadows. He is now serving 2 life sentences. As revenge, they kidnapped his wife and interrogated her to find his location. When they were about to kill her, he stormed the place and took out all the hitmen to avoid involving his family. He decided to fake domestic violence, so his enemies would think he didn't care about them. He chose to separate and went into hiding without joining the witness protection program. He gives Hector the weapon and tells them the way out. In about 1.5 miles, they will reach some stairs. They will come out next to a center where they will be safe to ask his gang for help. Returning to the van, Brian notices several police officers surrounding the perimeter. By the way they communicate, he suspects they are killers disguised as cops. In a very risky move, Brian takes the initiative by slamming the door open, surprising the enemies and taking out 2 of them with precision and efficiency. He goes back to the cameras and activates the sprinklers to soak the imposters with acid. He then cuts the exterior lights and climbs into the van to catch them off guard, showing great combat agility. Our protagonist forces the criminals to retreat. When they get into the patrol car, the ex-cop approaches aiming with his rifle. The imposters freeze, waiting for the inevitable, but to their luck, their victim ends up sparing their lives. Angry over what happened, Sonny scolds Piero for failing his mission. They must do whatever it takes to kill him. It is very likely he has developed a bond with someone in the neighborhood. If so, they must investigate and take hostage anyone he has spoken to. Back with Oscar, his brother tells him he went to look for the bodies of his partners in the morning. To his surprise, the place was completely clean. There was no vehicle. It looked as if nothing had happened. It is clear Brian is still alive. The guy is some kind of real-life Rambo. Now he must focus on the fights. Training will begin tomorrow morning. After informing the gang members' wives about the deaths, Hector is attacked by the group Brian had spared. They disarm him and take him to a remote place to question him. The gangster insists he knows nothing. He didn't even know he was a cop. He was just training his brother. Thinking he is lying, the killers are about to cut off his ear to torture him. But right then, the ex-cop bursts into the area and neutralizes several men. Running out of ammo, the remaining ones start chasing him with machetes to wear them down. Our protagonist runs up the hill where he disarms one of his pursuers. Thanks to their fatigue, Brian manages to neutralize his enemies without much trouble. Coming back to help Hector, he tells him he saw the tattoo on his arm. It turns out that before becoming a cop, Brian was involved in the gang world, a kind of retired gangster. Thanks to that past, he knows firsthand how criminal gangs operate, knowledge that was very useful when he joined the police force. Meanwhile, Oscar, accompanied by Marisol, decides to look for Brian in the van, when suddenly, they're attacked by several men dressed as soldiers. Using the skills gained from his training, Oscar knocks out 3 of them with ease, until he comes across one who seems to have been trained by his mentor. Despite this, the young man manages to surpass his skills. When cornered, the supposed soldier decides to reveal his identity, claiming to be a former police colleague of Brian. Like him, also his mentor, his intention is not to hurt him. He came to help in gratitude for his aid. He asks him to go with him and says that Brian is in trouble with the Nogales cartel. They must find him before it is too late. He asks some questions to locate him, and Oscar starts to suspect something is wrong. Aware that their lives are in danger, they decide to get in the vehicle without resistance, waiting for the right moment to contact his brother, to whom he informs the situation and gives the name of the supposed soldier. Hearing the name, Brian says it is the supposed agent who is meant to protect him from the mafia, but who tried to kill him behind his back. Apparently, Sonny had offered him a huge sum for his head. After taking the youngsters to the mansion of Valdez, a powerful Mexican drug lord and Sonny's partner operating on the southern border, the criminals plan to use Oscar and Marisol as bait to lure Brian. Completely furious over the loss of his men, Valdez threatens the team to pressure them. He believes Sonny is losing his mind over one man. If the operation fails, he will not risk more of his soldiers for a meaningless revenge. Under threats to his close circle, they force Oscar to contact his brother. The young man says he does not answer calls from unknown numbers. He will send him a message with a personal code so he knows it is him. He sends a text message and adds the supposed code. But in reality, it is camouflaged coordinates. The gangster sees the message and later receives the call, but the ex-cop tells him not to answer. He enters the coordinates into the GPS and says he knows the area. He calls Hector's soldiers over and coordinates them to attack the mansion strategically. Minutes later, several gang members appear on the perimeter disguised as police officers. Believing it to be a mistake by the police department, the police chief greets them with his guard down, which ends with him being shot in the head. The gang members take cover in the truck, and the traffickers move in when they hear the gunshots. Eric organizes his soldiers, and the narcos head to the weapon rack, where the boss kills Piero without any remorse, adding that he is just a nuisance. He then tells the kids he will use them in his human trafficking business. They have the perfect profile many of his clients are looking for. At that moment, Hector's reinforcements arrive and manage to gain the upper hand, taking down multiple traffickers. Meanwhile, Brian and Hector infiltrate from the back. To avoid distractions, the ex-cop tells him to keep watch at the window. He moves through the facility and comes across a pair of traffickers, whom he neutralizes through the walls. Desperate with uncertainty, the student decides to attack the assigned guard. He positions himself at the door, and minutes later, Eric appears looking for ammunition. The young man surprises him, and they start fighting with bare fists, seeing he cannot win. Eric grabs the gun from the floor, but Marisol ends up shooting him in the legs. At that moment, Brian appears and tells them the area is surrounded. He asks them to come along, and as they leave the mansion, Valdez fires his rifle at them, missing all his shots. While loading a grenade, Hector appears behind him and shoots him, killing him instantly. While the teenagers receive assistance, our protagonist is greatly surprised to see his wife stepping out of a police vehicle. In an emotional encounter, they kiss and spend the whole night together. Some undefined time later, we see Sonny leaving his cell while being escorted by a special team. Upon arriving at the visiting room, the agents remove their helmets, revealing it is a tactical team led by Brian, who is tired of having to remain in the shadows, away from his family because of a deranged criminal.